Okay, Darko. Welcome to your birth chart reading. So, if I'm not mistaken, you have never had an astrology reading before, right?
No, no,
No, so this is your first time. And how much do you know about astrology?
not much. I just know that I'm a Leo, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first pulled up the chart, you asked, oh, is that Leo the red squiggly line?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, nice. So, indeed, what you saw in the area where all the planets were, the sun, the moon, um, this part in the top right corner, that is Leo. So you're right. You can see that there's a lot of planets there.
mhm,
Um, okay, so then before we get sort of into the birth chart reading and talk a little bit more about all of the Leo, there are a lot of different ways that different astrologers do astrology. So, for example, you might have heard of more the predictive astrology, like, oh, on this day you're gonna meet the love of your life, or oh, on this day you're gonna, I don't know, get a new job or something, get a promotion at work. But this reading is not focused on that. This is really focused on who you are as an individual and sort of what are the tendencies that you have and the challenges that you might face through your entire life. And there's also different types of astrology, and one of them specifically is called evolutionary astrology. And that one, whether you believe in a past life or not, the way that astrology works is it assumes that you lived on Earth in a past life. Maybe you weren't named Darko and you didn't look like this, but somehow else, and that in that past life you sort of had specific challenges or specific lessons that you had to learn and issues that had to deal with, and not all of those lessons were learned, or there were some tendencies left over from that life, and you came here in this life to sort of work through them and to learn those lessons. So that's sort of the approach that we'll take for this reading, is to really understand, like, why did you choose to come here? Where do these tendencies come from? Like, I gave you the example before, oh, you love money, like, why? Where does that come from? That's just an example, it's not true for you. um and then, yeah, going through that to really sort of understand yourself, and what are the reason you have these specific tendencies in your life. Does all of that make sense?
yeah.
Okay,
Interesting.
cool. Yeah. Okay, so we'll get started. So when we talk about this past life and um, current life, when we look at your past life according to astrology, this means that in a past life you really lost a sense of yourself. So a lot of, if you think of a sort of a typical understanding of this, is like when you have a Buddhist monk, for example, that goes to the mountaintop and they meditate so much and they really lose a sense of who they are. They don't have any more desires. For example, they don't even care if they eat nice food, or they don't want jewelry. They're not attached to who they are, if that makes sense. This doesn't mean that in a past life you were a Buddhist monk necessarily, but rather that through certain circumstances that you didn't focus that much on yourself. You didn't focus that much on what it means to be you, what are the things that you desire and want in this life, and didn't focus that much on the earthly things, right? So the fact that you're a body that has needs, right? You have the need to sleep, you have the need to eat food. And one of the interesting things about your past life, that might have caused you to sort of withdraw from yourself and these earthly needs, um, was the fact that you felt like there was a lot of chaos around you and you felt overwhelmed by that. Um, and a lot of the ways that you might have dealt with this, of course, is pretending there is no self, there are no needs that you have, but also in a way that you were always sort of busy with the chaos. You were always sort of just responding and reacting to all of the different events that were happening. Like, One day you lose your job, and then the next day you get hit by a car, and then the next day, I don't know, your house catches on fire, for example. um, so those are sort of some of the tendencies that you may have had in a past life. So on the other side, when we take a look at what you came here in this life to work through, is that you really came to take care of your earthly needs, and also to take care of your ego, to really establish your sense of self. And this might be a theme that you might see, we'll go through the chart, of course, but this might be a theme that you see coming up over and over in your life, that you keep having situations or events brought up in your life that really urge you to keep practicing that. There might be maybe chaotic situations where, because you had the practice in a past life, you want to separate. You want to say, oh no, I'm not a human. I don't need nice food. I don't need to sleep. And really be caught up in that situation. But rather, life keeps giving you these chaotic situations in order for you to be able to learn to do something different this time. So according to your birth chart, this sort of different thing that you're supposed to do is to, like I said, really ground yourself in the earthly world, to really recognize, no, I am a human with a body. Like I said before, I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to have pretty things, I need to listen to music because my soul needs beautiful things around me. And one of the ways that I think could be really useful, and this also is shown in your birth chart, could be useful, that could encourage you to do that, is really withdrawing yourself and allowing yourself to reflect. So the aspect that we see here in astrology is sort of called the philosopher's sign, which is the sign of Virgo. And that doesn't mean you need to become a philosopher in this lifetime. But rather what it means is that even though there might be a lot of chaos happening around you, that you need to just take a step back, not react right away, take a step back, withdraw and consider, what do I believe about the world? What does this mean? How do I want to react? Who am I? Just sort of reflect, and then return and take a sort of accurate step forward, or a more aligned step forward. So does any of this make sense to you? Do you feel like some of these themes come up in your life at all?
Yeah, like the things you were saying about not taking care of yourself, kind of. Like always, like I noticed that too. Always get caught up in the moment of the other people and not like reflect.
Yeah.
Like just take a moment and reflect, because like life gets busy, right? You always just gonna go. So
No,
it's kind of,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think another huge aspect of the sign of Virgo is also developing this skill that will help others. So really grounding yourself in the earthly, in the body, like we said, but also striving for a sort of perfection of a physical skill to help others. So when you feel like you might want to distract and like, oh, I don't exist, I'm not a body, I'm not a human, because there's so much chaos around you, what could help is to indeed think, how can I direct my attention to sort of develop maybe a skill? I don't know. I want to become a carpenter, to really help others as well. And that could be a really nice way for you to focus and to keep reminding yourself of being a human. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
cool. So let's talk a little bit more about Leo.
Yeah.
um, you have a lot of Leo energy in your chart.
Yeah.
So when we take a look at that sort of top right corner with the red squiggly line, as you said, and you see right underneath it, there are those four black line drawings, right? So you sort of have the circle with the dot in the middle. Then you have Mercury. Then you have the moon, right? You see that sort of
Yep.
sign of a half moon. And then after that, Venus. So, what this means is that at the time when you were born, all of these planets were up in the sky from the viewpoint of Earth. They were all in this sort of section, the Leo section, you can say. And this means that the themes of Leo are a huge, huge part of your life. So, what is Leo? I think
Yeah,
I don't know if you've looked a lot into astrology, but maybe you've heard like, oh, they love to show off. They love to dress and perform, and maybe they're singers or they're very creative.
a center stage
Sorry?
or like a center stage.
Exactly. Yeah, they want to be the attention. Exactly. These are the things that you hear about Leo. When we take a look a little bit deeper about why does Leo do this, or where do these sort of sayings about Leo come from? What we see is that the themes of Leo in this lifetime are really just to express itself. I'm not sure if you identify with this, but a lot of Leos are really expressive, really passionate. And you see, your moon is also in Leo, which is your emotional self. You tend to sort of wear your emotions on your sleeve. If you're upset, people know you're upset. If you're happy, people know you're happy. You're just here to express what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what your ideals are. So that's really a huge part of your life that you might see come up. And when we talked just a second ago about your past life and your current life, I think this is really nice to have this in your chart because it really helps you, remember? It really helps you to um, make sure you connect to the earthly, right? Make sure that you say, who am I as a human? And what am I doing as a human? Do you feel like all of this Venus, this Leo energy is something that you felt in your life?
Yeah, like the to express myself, kind of that energy, like the moon, yes. But at the same time, it's kind of like dangerous as well too, right? Because I noticed that too. If, like I express myself a lot, and I also can either hurt some people or be taken in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But especially if you don't like properly communicate, because like you said, like emotion is like the one thing, and you just express it without thinking at the moment. Yeah,
No, definitely. And that's where you indeed see that philosopher theme come up that we talked about, right? That you really need
yeah,
to make sure you take a second to step back. I think one of the other sort of bad or dark sides of Leo that can sometimes come about is that they start to express themselves in order to please others. I don't know, you can tell me a bit later if you also feel like you sometimes do this. But sometimes Leo, instead of really just being expressing purely out of who they are, they start to think, oh, actually, that person will be happy if I say things this way. Or, oh, that person looks bored right now. I'm going to entertain them. So sometimes Leo can yeah, remove themselves instead of expressing who they really are and how they really feel to more please others. I don't know if that's also a part that you feel you have in your life.
does it count if you like, for example, I say the things that like come out of my mind, like the truth kind of thing, and something that hurts or not. But at the same time, I kind of stop and not say it. Does that count? And just so that the other person's kind of more neutral, like the
No,
emotion.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah,
So I
that
like that.
you often feel like you need to it's either expressing myself and hurting others
Yeah,
or not expressing myself to keep the peace. Yeah.
yeah. Well, it depends because each person takes it different, right? Because it might not be hurting like when I say it, but the other person interpret it in the
Yeah.
wrong way.
No, definitely. And I think what one thing I would say to that is just to always go back to what your true values are, right? To just take a step back and say, is this truly what I believe? and why am I sharing this with another person? Because sometimes you might think, I don't feel like I need to share this, or I'm sharing it to whatever, to make somebody upset. Or you think like, oh, actually, when I think about it, when I really step back and think about it, I don't actually believe this. Like, why am I saying this to this other person? Because sometimes Leo can be so caught up in the moment and so much like, oh my God, you did what? You said what? And I would really just encourage you to just take a step back and be like, do I really believe that? What do I really think in this situation?
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good point.
Cool. Okay. So if we sort of continue with all of these planets that we see in the sign of Leo, Leo is an astrology sign, an astrology archetype, and there's many of them, right? There's Aquarius, there's Libra, Virgo, but there's another aspect in astrology, which is houses. And if you look all the way in the middle of the circle, you see there are those numbers, right? And there are these sort of slices of the pie that with the black lines that are separated. So you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up until 12.
Yep.
And you see where Leo is, where all those planets are, there's a number 8. And that means that you have all of this Leo energy and all of these planets in the 8th house. What does this mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So the 8th house, and there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. So let me just give me a second to get there.
Yeah.
So the 8th house is really interesting. We started talking about sort of the surface level misconceptions of Leo, right? Oh, they love to be on the front stage or on
Yeah.
the spotlight. So if we take a look at sort of the misconceptions of the 8th house, or what people right away say, oh, that's the deep, dark stuff, That's all the like skeletons that we hide in our closet, or, that's all the taboo stuff, like when somebody dies or people have sex or things like that. But when we actually dig a little bit deeper into like what is the 8th house actually about, because this doesn't mean that you're a person that's like always thinking about death or hiding little skeleton in your closets, right?
Yeah.
What we think about, well, maybe you are, I don't know. what we see actually with the 8th house is that this is the axis of trusting others and being vulnerable. If you look at the opposite of the 8th house, you have the 2nd house, right? They're really opposite from each other. And you see those big red lines
Yeah.
that show all this opposition. Yeah. So on the one side, the 8th house is really trusting others, being vulnerable, because when you trust somebody, for example, in a relationship, when you really show them your true feelings and you open yourself up, that's really vulnerable. Somebody can hurt you. It can also be from a money perspective. When you really trust somebody to perhaps help you by providing for you a house or a job or food, you're really vulnerable, because if they don't provide for you, you're gonna die. Like, you're not gonna get any food. You're gonna die eventually.
Yeah.
And on the other side, what we have in the 2nd house, that is the part where you're like, I am providing for myself. Like, I don't need others. I can be self-sufficient. And this can literally mean self-sufficient in terms of money, that you have your own job, you buy your own groceries, you pay your own rent. But it can also mean self-sufficiency in terms of an emotional connection, right? That, oh, I don't need to have friends, or I don't need good relationships around me. Like, I can survive on my own. So you might find that you have certain life themes in your life that keep repeating around this. That there might be a deep part of you, all of these planets in Leo, that really passionately, you feel quite deeply. And you might really understand that life is quite vulnerable, and it can be sometimes really scary or destructive, right? Like we're all gonna die.
Yeah.
Like people
Yeah.
are always gonna hurt us, right? Um,
Memento mori.
sorry.
Memento mori, like the Latin. Marcus
Yeah,
Aurelius was saying about death is inventable, like it always gonna happen.
exactly. Yeah. So you truly deeply feel that. And whether you feel okay with it and you learn to just trust people or not, whether you really think no, thank you, I feel it too much,
Yeah.
that's of course up to you to decide. But you might find that you often have this pull between, okay, I'm going to trust others completely, versus no, like, you screw everyone. I got this on my own. I don't know if this sort of these two themes resonate with you at all. Have you experienced them?
You, for me, for say, I don't know about the other Leos, is for me, I had to try to be more in the middle, like trust them, but at the same time, certain, like I guess you can say certain groups, you know what I mean? Like, for example, your partner, you have to trust them and not be like half not trusting, half trusting, right? And compare like friends, you can be a different way of trusting, you can be partially trusting. Because
Exactly.
like exactly, like I've been through stuff like you said, being backstabbed and whatever, and stuff happens. Like you want to minimize that and not get hurt, right?
Yeah. No, indeed. And I think, yeah, to a certain extent, you want to minimize it. But there's also, yeah, like I said, there's this deep part of you that really needs to connect to others. And sometimes the stronger part we might think is just saying, no, I don't trust others. But sometimes the stronger part is saying, I trust this person and I completely understand that they could just backstab me right now, right? And
Yeah,
just be okay with that. Trusting trusting not that like, okay, I have my back, but also trusting that everything is okay. I don't want to get too woo woo with you because I don't know, maybe you don't like that, but just trusting that the universe has your back. The universe is not trying to hurt you on purpose or something.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Another interesting part that I want to chat about with your birth chart is your career. And the reason why I want to talk about this, like a lot of people come to an astrology reading, like, oh, what should I do for my career? Blah, blah, blah. We won't necessarily get into that, but the reason why I want to talk to you about your career is that if you look between all of these red lines, this tension between trusting others and not, only relying on yourself, if you look in the middle that intersects it, it's sort of the top left corner, you have the part that says MC. I don't know if you see that part in black letters.
Let's see. Where is it?
Top left corner
Oh, okay.
in the
I see. Oh, I see. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
yeah, in the 11th house. Cool.
Yeah.
So in astrology, that is really it's the highest point when you were born. And that means that it's your public image. So for a lot of people, that literally means career, like a lot of um, how others view you that don't know you intimately, your family, your friends, but sort of your colleagues or your neighbor, for example, the image that you have out in the public. This is what that spot represents. And the reason this part is so interesting for you is that it's in the sign of Scorpio. And the sign of Scorpio is quite interesting because it has a lot of those same themes to the eighth house, right? Not being afraid of going deep, understanding that sometimes being vulnerable means people will backstab you, understanding that things are gonna die and leave you, and all of those things. And like I shared just a second ago, there's a lot of power in that as well. There's a lot of power in just being open with your emotions. Leo, you're quite expressive. And allowing that sort of emotional power to show a little bit more in your career as well. And I think this could be an interesting area where you also get a little bit of a release from this constant tension of, you know, do I completely trust others or do I withdraw from the rest of the world? And because your career could provide you like a nice middle ground, right? That you're not going all the way so deep where you let people know all your inner, deepest, darkest thoughts, the really intimate relationships. But you don't also go all the way on the opposite spectrum where you say, no, nobody touch me. um, that there could be this really nice middle of the career, the public image, the community, where you really sort of show that emotional part of yourself and um, allow that to sort of influence your public image. There's sort of that distance there, you know? You don't tell people your deepest,
Yeah,
darkest secrets, but also you're not completely withdrawn. But it could be an area that you really allow some of that emotional depth to come through. I don't know if that relates to you at all in terms of your career.
kind of makes sense. Yeah, and the care, yeah, because you want to like proceed and level up, and that you kind of have to like open up almost. At the
Yeah,
same time, yeah, you don't want to be like just out there because everybody has like a different perspective, right? So
yeah.
yeah,
No, exactly. And with the career, you, yeah, like I said, you get that distance.
yeah,
It's a different type of relationship than the relationship you have with family or with a partner, right?
yes,
In a career, there's a little bit of that, like, yeah, emotional connection, but still you're removed, you know? It's 5 o'clock, you go home, you close that door.
yeah. Unless it's your own business, then that's a different thing. But
Exactly.
yeah,
I think what's also interesting to talk about this sort of power in around your career is that you might find this house, the 11th house, is also the house of friends. So you might find through your life that a lot of your friends and your connections, your community, help you in terms of your career. They might really loyally help you out in that sense. And I think what's really important to emphasize with Scorpio, because you said sometimes you know people can backstab you, is to really look at the motivations. To really look not at the action, like oh my god, this person just gave me a gajillion dollars, he's my best friend, but to really look at the motivation. Why did they do that? And if that motivation and the why is really pure because they really wanted to help you, because they really thought you could do a good job, um, then you know that they're really a good friend and somebody that you want to keep in your life as well.
interesting. Yeah, because you don't want to just go blindly in it too. Yeah,
Definitely. Definitely. I think, yeah, I think Leo can sometimes be very much in the moment, right?
yeah,
As you already shared. So indeed, stepping back, remember, we've talked about that gajillion times now. Stepping back, just reflecting a little bit, not only on yourself, who am I, what do I want, but especially when it comes with other people as well. What are their intentions? Why are they doing this? And then you can really start to discern between people that are really that you can't be vulnerable with and you can't trust them versus
yeah,
people that you say no, like I choose not to be close to this person as well.
yeah. Like a genuine desire it has to be mutual. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I have three more themes to
Oh,
chat about in your birth chart. No, I have to say it was actually really interesting to take a look at it. I think you have a really, really interesting astrology chart.
oh, how so?
Yeah, because there are a lot of themes that are sort of quite opposite from each other. So
The
the
yin
themes,
and the yang.
yeah, yeah, the themes come out quite obviously, I think. But also there are some really nice, almost like combinations that you wouldn't expect. So for example, sometimes you look at certain charts and you think like, oh, okay, this person just is creative, loves to perform, they're great at career. It's quite obvious. But with your chart, what's really interesting, and this is sort of the next topic that I'm going to get into, is your essence, all of this Leo, which is who you are on the inside, your values, your emotions, your communication style, is actually kind of quite opposite from the way you present yourself to the world. There's a point in the chart, the AC, that's in the first house. So if you find the one in the middle,
Yeah, the
and you see,
14.
yeah, and then you see there's the AC. This is the point in the chart that represents how you show yourself to the outside world. So this is really like if somebody, I don't know, sees you at the supermarket or, um, yeah, it's not your close friends or your close family.
Mhm.
And what's really interesting for you is you actually show yourself to others. Maybe when you feel like you're in an unsafe or an unsure situation, like, oh, I don't know if I can trust these people very much. The way you show yourself is super serious and super like, I'm dealing with my, don't bother me, like I'm on my own, like
The poker
I'm
face.
sorry.
The poker face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're here for business. Sort of put your head down and focus on the work. And the reason why this is so interesting, like that it can sometimes maybe feel at odds once people get to know you, they find out you're actually quite expressive, you're quite loud, you can like to be the center of attention, and that you really can go quite deep and intimate with your feelings and with your thoughts. What's interesting about this, the way you show yourself to others, let me just get some water, is that there is a part of you, um, that feels like maybe you need to suffer, or you need to have a hard life. This point, this is called the ascendant AC, is in the sign of Capricorn. So you knew quite a bit about Leo, but I'm not sure how much you know about Capricorn. Capricorn is can sometimes be a sign that thinks, yeah, I'm here to suffer. Things are gonna be hard for me. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm here to work hard. They don't want things to be easy and light. Um, and we can see how this sort of theme might be coming from your past life, where you didn't nurture so much yourself, where you there was so much chaos and you were just responding to chaos everywhere. Um, and there might be this part of you that needs to sort of learn. It's okay if you show yourself to people that you don't know in that way. It doesn't mean you need to change yourself. But over time, I think your soul also needs to learn that, this is just what you do in unsafe situations, but to know from deep inside that actually you don't have to suffer. You don't need to have a hard life. You don't need to be alone. Capricorn is very much a sign that's like, I'm alone. Remember,
Mm.
we talked about the
Yeah.
theme of trusting others versus not.
Yeah.
Um, so as long as deep inside you work on knowing, I'm not alone. There's so many people that I can trust, genuinely trust. A lot of people have sort of fake friends. They have so many friends and everything remains on surface level. But really, when it comes down to it, like when you, I don't know, are crying or your parents are in the hospital or you need to move, then those friends are nowhere to be found because they
Yeah.
don't want to carry your furniture. But for you, you have that sort of beautiful power of you to really discern, are these people that have the right motivation, and to trust them really purely and beautifully, and to know that they can also support you. Life doesn't need to be hard. You don't need to do everything on your own. um yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna say around that. Does any of that sort of make sense?
Yeah, like you don't have to suffer alone. You can get that minimized and go basically like in life you need that someone to help you out as well. It's like a partnership, right? And like because
Exactly.
certain things you can reach by yourself, but at a certain point when you reach it, it's better to have someone else helping you out as well too, so you can both reach the goals.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not even about, it can be definitely about somebody helping you out, but it can even be deeper. It's just a sort of realization, right?
Yeah.
Because remember we talked about the eighth house, where you really feel deeply, you understand that things are gonna end. We're all gonna die. Um, a lot of people don't care about others genuinely. They just care about themselves. You understand that. Um, so that doesn't mean that you need to go on your own. It it's you need to sort of realize and accept also that sometimes things can be easier. Even though life ends, sometimes it can be fun while it lasts.
Oh yeah, like you want a sweet
Have
life.
really nice interactions.
Yeah, like it's sweeter. Life is sweeter when you have someone to join you in, with your silliness or whatever you want to do in life, right?
Yes.
But you have to be careful because, like you were saying, that I noticed that as well. Like everybody has so much Instagram followers or Facebook followers, but truly, how much do you actually know about the person or they have your back is very slim. Maybe like one or five, right? So,
Yeah. I think another thing that's interesting to sort of chat about Capricorn is the planet of Saturn. And you find Saturn actually when you take a look at the fifth house. So in the a little inner circle, find the number five, and in that slice of the pie, you find Saturn at the bottom right corner. Um, and having Saturn here in the fifth house, it might mean that sometimes you feel, not only did we just talk about you feel like life needs to be hard, but sometimes you also feel like, oh, I don't need pleasure, I don't need beautiful things. I don't need romance or um, hobbies or things like that.
mm,
And you can understand, considering everything that we've just said the last 40 minutes, where that comes from, right? You understand so deeply that people can hurt you, that life ends. So, of course, there's a part of you that feels like, yeah, who cares about a hobby? We're all going to die. But I would encourage you to not let that to stop you. At the end of the day, the sign of Leo is really the sign of the child. So, what does a child do? They play, they trust, they just express themselves, right? Children say some things that you think about, wow, why that was super stupid to say, or sometimes they kind of hurt people with what they say, but they just don't think about it or don't see it that way. And children all the time are playing and just doing things that they find fun, right?
yeah.
They just, oh, I like the stone, so I'm gonna take it with me.
Every 5 minutes it changed.
This macaroni, so I'm gonna make a necklace out of it, for example. What did you say?
Yeah, like every 5 minutes to change something.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be afraid that, you don't need to suffer. You don't need to stop all your hobbies. You can pursue that. You can have lots of fun there and find things that bring you joy and things that bring you peace. And, you might think, oh, like, life is going to end. What's the point anyways of making a nice house with nice painted walls and nice paintings, and but actually there can be a lot of niceness in that, just having that around and really allowing yourself to enjoy that and to play. And it will really also help you remember and sink into into earth, into the fact that you're human, right? The first theme that we talked about, right, was that you need to ask yourself, who am I, what do I believe in, and ground to your body, ground to the fact that, We need to get up at a certain hour of the day. We need to go to work if we want to pay rent, right? Not to sort of be like, la, 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 la. None of that matters. And that can be a really nice part that sort of helps lighten up some of the heavier things that you might be going through.
Yeah, and but at the same time, I feel like the minimalistic, like very minimal, like what you own is also nice as well. I noticed
No,
that more recently too, right?
yeah, no, definitely. And that's the thing. I'm not sort of saying or encouraging like, oh, you need to have lots of stuff, right? It can be more experiences as well, right? Having nice experiences, going for nice walks in nature, or going to music concerts, right? It doesn't have to be physical things,
Mhm.
but just drawing back to things that just bring you joy, that you're just doing because I want to,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
Okay, so there's just one more theme. This has been a very long reading. Um, okay, so there's one more planet that I want to talk about, and it's just as a way to sort of wrap up all of these themes that we've been talking about, and that's the planet of Pluto. And you find Pluto if you look in the 12th house. So find number 12 in the little inner circle, and then you see the P in the outer blue part. So having Pluto there means that there is a lot of depth and a lot of actually power when it comes to your subconscious beliefs.
Did you say
The
depth?
Sorry?
Did you say depth or?
Yeah, depth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, depth. Mhm.
So we talked about the eighth house already. The eighth house is very much your internal world, right? What you're thinking, what you're feeling. It's like when you retreat from the rest of the world and you sort of wonder, what's the point of life? The 12th house is another one of those internal houses where you're really considering, what do I actually believe about the world? They're sort of the programs or the beliefs that we picked up as children because it's what we were raised around. And if you just allow yourself, remember we talked about step back and reflect. If you allow yourself and give yourself some time to just examine those thoughts and beliefs, what do I really believe? And is this even true? You know, maybe I was raised by my parents telling me that, it's not possible to be rich. All rich people are evil. To really take that time and to say, do I actually believe that? And to maybe put in some of that work to change those beliefs, because there can be really a lot of power and a lot of sort of, Pluto is the destiny in your chart, a lot of power and a lot of destiny for you in your life when you are not afraid to look under there and to really examine, yeah, what you truly believe in. And again, like I've mentioned it 50,000 times in the reading, I would encourage you not to stay there. At the end of the day, there is also a very large part of your chart. Remember, it's not about withdrawing, ignoring that you have an earthly body and just staying in your thoughts, always contemplating, but what does it really mean and why are we here? At the end of the day, there's really, your soul, what it needs in this lifetime is to, do that exploration. Don't be afraid to go internally, to reflect, to go deep into the scary parts of your mind. But at the end of the day, you also really need to take a step back into the world, to go back and to say, okay, so I just concluded I believe this. What does that mean about how I'm going to be in this physical life? What does that mean about, when am I going to go to bed and get up? What does that mean about how I'm going to treat my relationships? What does that mean about how I talk to others? It's really important that you don't forget you are a human on the earth as well. So I think that's just sort of how I wanted to round off your chart.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. Yeah, especially about Pluto, like the mind, because sometimes I get into that what if, what about this, like the universe, why exists, and all that, and it's just like a rabbit hole. It's never ending.
Yeah.
You're always chasing something. At the
No,
same time, it can be very exhausting too.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and don't in a past life you really lost your sense of self, for whatever reason. So sort of why, or according to astrology, why you came back in this lifetime is to establish yourself, establish who you are, what you believe in. And sometimes your charts can really give you that challenge. Okay, Darko, you came here to establish yourself. Well, let's see how good you're going to be at that when we give you all of this action in your eighth house, where you have all of this internal, oh my God, what is life? What does it mean?
Uh,
So it's sort of like a nice play in a way as well.
yeah. What does those other planets mean in the under the Leo? Like you said about the moon. What about the other ones? Briefly,
Yeah,
how?
so the first one, the one with the circle, that's the sun. So,
Yeah.
like you said, you are a Leo, that's sun sign in Leo. The one underneath it is Mercury. So, that's really your communication.
Okay.
Also, how you communicate can be very fiery, very passionate, very much like a child. You just blurt out without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Underneath it is the moon,
Yeah.
your emotions. So, very much maybe you even have like child's emotions as well. Like, something doesn't happen the way you want it to, and then right away they go, ah, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the one underneath it is Venus. And Venus is, they call it the relationship planet. So I think there is a deep part of you that when you are in a relationship, you want to make sure the other person really deeply knows you. But Venus can also be your ideals. So what this means that also in your ideals, you're really focused. You're sort of like a child as well. You really have these um, childlike ideals of wanting things to be pure. And you can be sometimes quite expressive about your ideals. Maybe you find that if people don't match your ideals, they maybe think something different about the world. Um, that is yeah, you're really like, oh, expressive about it, or you get a bit judgmental about it.
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you
That's,
enjoyed
that's
it.
a,
Do you have
for
any
sure.
other questions?
No, that's pretty it. I think you
Cool.
summed it up pretty well about Leos.
Yeah, no, and we
Well,
shared a
Leos.
lot. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, a lot of the experiences that come throughout life, you might find that they're sort of related to these themes. But eventually, at the end of the day, like they're not here to trick you or something. They're really here to help you. Like I said, when you came with this one mission to really help you with that. But at the end of the day, you always have a choice about how you're going to act, right? You always have a choice. Like, are you going to be the child emotional Leo, like I didn't get things my way, or will you allow yourself to step back and reflect and examine how you want to act before you act, for example?
Yep. Well said.
Nice.
Hopefully, you can do one about my past life, what I lived.
Yeah. Where you lived, what you did. No.
Yeah, right?
Your name, your age.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Darko. Thanks for letting me read for you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.